There's a big slate of playoff games for the NFL this Sunday, and of course you're going to be playing DFS and betting on it. Well, you beautiful people, I would like to share everything I found with you for this slate. Let's discuss. Let's start with Saquon Barkley. $7,900 is going to be a premier player on this slate, especially when you get guys like Dalvin Cook struggling lately, Joe Mixon kind of splitting his receiving role with Samaje Perine. And because of that, Saquon Barkley right now is coming in as the highest owned player on the slate, according to the DFS blueprint, and that includes the wide receivers. Now, at lower ownership, I'm just going to be flat out honest and say I prefer those wide receivers, but there's not a lot of running back options. The concern is that Saquon hasn't been all that efficient this year. I mean, he's 34th in yards per touch. He's basically surviving out there on volume. And now he faces a top 5 run defense where he'll be an underdog in this game. It's a little bit of a concern when this guy's the highest owned player on the slate. I'm not gung-ho about him. So we start off the show with saying that Saquon, I mean, you could probably leverage off of him. He's a maybe. I would much prefer these guys at the top end wide receiver position, and we can start with Justin Jefferson versus the New York Giants number 31 ranked secondary. I mean, it's going to be a great matchup whether he's in the slot, whether he's out wide. This guy has over 100 yards in 70% of his games this year. Yeah, he'll be probably the highest owned wide receiver, definitely a top 3 owned play on the slate, but I'll prefer him to Saquon, to Stephon Diggs, and I like his over 91.5 receiving yards on Prize Picks right now. I ended up taking this more on the props that we have taken for this slate later on in the video, but this is our starter. All right, so those are two like the most expensive guys in the slate. We need some value. Let's talk it. How about $4,900 Gabe Davis? Look, he's going to be one of the lower owned wide receivers on the slate. Right now, even at a cheaper price tag, you're getting an outside wide receiver with Josh Allen in an offense projected to score nearly 28 points at just 15% ownership. For context, that barely puts him in the top 10 in ownership on just a 3-game slate. That's leverage and that's appealing. So Gabe Davis at lower ownership and a lower price point is appealing. And then you get Isaiah Hodgins at $4,100 for the Giants, and honestly, Daniel Jones' favorite target as of late. And it's hard not to like him when this guy is 6'4". He's about 210 pounds. Now he probably plays around 220 pounds. He's just a big wide receiver. You throw it in his general direction and he's probably going to catch it. And what's so appealing about him is his role continues to increase as he improves. I mean, look at his route rate. How many times he's out there for a passing play? It goes from 85%, 90, 93%, 100% this past week. It's now increased basically for like 6 straight weeks because they're trusting him more, especially the bigger body in the red zone. He's top 14 or more points in 4 out of his last 5 games. He's a consistent piece out there and a strong value. All right, now let's talk running back. Dalvin Cook at $7,100. He's going to take on a Giants run defense that ranks 28th in the NFL. Now, for a cheaper price tag, he's just as inefficient as Saquon has been this year, but they're both seeing their snaps, their routes run, their volume. I'll honestly just get leveraged a little bit. He's still highly owned by going to Dalvin Cook. But an interesting option is right here at $5,400, a value play this week and one of the best plays on the entire slate in Jeff Wilson Jr. You see, Wilson Jr.'s snaps were already increasing. He's basically been the workhorse out there, 61 and 64% of the snaps the last 2 weeks. It's led to a good amount of touches, 15 carries in week 17. But then Raheem Mostert fractures his finger, his thumb last week. So you see 65% of the snaps, 16 carries, basically the full workload for Jeff Wilson. And Mostert's now in doubt to play this week. And look, Wilson's going to be a 10-point underdog on this Miami Dolphins teams, but he's still facing a Bills defense that is not that great versus the run. The Bills rank 26th against the run, borderline bottom 5. And yes, like I said, it's not going to be great that he's an underdog here, a big underdog, but it's factored in the price point and he'll see some passing game usage. Now, I currently don't see Jeff Wilson's prop. They're probably waiting for some closure on the quarterback situation and Raheem Mostert earlier in the week. But if it does pop up here, I have Jeff Wilson projected in the mid-70s for rushing yards. So if you see that thing in the 50s, the 60s, hammer the over. So we like Jeff Wilson. Then there's Joe Mixon here at $6,800. He's coming in a little bit lower owned, but there are some concerns. For starters, his route rate, how many times he's out there for a passing play, has just plummeted. You can see right here, 43%, 55%, 35%, 39%. You would like to see this number in the 60s, mid-60s for a running back like Joe Mixon, which it was earlier in the year. It's not there anymore, which means you don't see as many targets and as many passing play opportunities, dump offs, receiving yard touchdowns, and that's a little bit of a concern. Hasn't caught up with him just yet, but it will eventually. Now, the part that's appealing about Joe Mixon is that he's coming in lower owned right now. He's coming in as like the 4th highest owned running back on the slate, and because of that, I'll have a little bit more interest because he is a 6.5 point favorite, the 2nd biggest favorite on the slate, a team that's projected to score points, and he'll still see probably 15 plus carries. He can get you there on just that. Now, if you're looking for any type of value, I mean, the Ravens running backs are here. We have to see what Gus Edwards in the concussion protocol. I'm not all that interested in J.K. Dobbins' lack of a receiving role. Now a big underdog. Who knows what's happening with the quarterbacks there? If there was a cheaper running back, $5,000 or below, to be looking at $5,000 flat, it would be James Cook at $4,800. $4,800. We have seen Cook see some more usage as of late, playing in the 40% of the snaps. Week 18, he plays 56% of the snaps in a game that, actually matters for them trying to secure the 2 seed in Buffalo. He sees double-digit opportunities. It was nice to see. But the question truly becomes, will they actually trust this guy who hasn't fumbled since his first touch in week 1 in his rookie year? Will they actually trust him when it matters most in the postseason? Now, my honest guess here is no, they don't trust him, at least not enough to give him more work. You'll probably see 40% of the snaps, 6 to 8 touches, needs a big play to get you there. It's most likely an avoid. So let's go from a cheap running back to a cheaper wide receiver, at least cheaper than he should be. And that's T. Higgins at $6,200. I'm a fan. These guys priced right next to each other. No $5,000 receivers makes this slate really interesting, but these guys priced right next to each other, and Gabe Davis talked about it earlier, and T. Higgins, they're just lower owned than they should be at cheaper price tags than they should be. Their offenses are expected to score a lot of points. The 2 highest team totals on the slate, arguably the 2 best quarterbacks on the slate. I like this spot a lot for T. Higgins at just $6,200. He's coming in right around 15% owned, way too low owned. And then there's the number 1 wide receiver for the Bills and Stefon Diggs. Saquon will be the highest owned player on the slate. Stefon Diggs will be right there with Jefferson for the 2nd highest, according to the DFS blueprint link down below if you want to check it out. Now, the concern for Stefon Diggs is the Bills actually throw less when they're ahead, and that seems maybe obvious, but teams like the Chargers and Tampa Bay continue to just throw at normal rates even when they're leading. The Bills, they run a little bit more, they play at a slower pace of play, and that leads to less upside for a guy like Stefon Diggs as a 10-point favorite. Now, with that said, he's definitely going to remain in play still, but I'll prefer Jamar Chase, who's going to come in a little bit lower owned, and I'll prefer Tyreek Hill, especially if we get Teddy Bridgewater in this game or Tua, which seems like an outside chance. Tyreek Hill will be one of the lowest owned guys. He'll probably be the 5th or 6th highest owned wide receiver on the slate when we know no matter who the quarterback, even if it is Skylar Thompson, he has major and massive upside. Similar things can be said for Jalen Waddle, but a lesser extent because there's another option in T. Higgins there who is also lower owned to pivot off of. Okay, so maybe you don't go to Stefon Diggs, maybe you don't even want to go to Gabe Davis, although I do like him. How about Isaiah McKenzie, who's $3,400 and a cheap way to get exposure to this Buffalo Bills offense? He's definitely in play. Now, the nice thing we saw about McKenzie was his snaps came back up. When he faced Chicago, I believe in week 16, he only sees 35% of the snaps, but then he goes back to 56% and 22 routes run. He gets his normal rollback, right? 22 routes compared to the 8 he saw the last time he played a complete game. That was a concern. We got it corrected. He got 20 plus routes. Now, he is the 3rd or 4th option for a team as a 10-point favorite. We just said probably doesn't throw as much, maybe late in the game in the 4th quarter. So a little bit of a concern, but at $3,400, he gets a touchdown and he's paying off. Other options down here, maybe even a better option, is $3,900 Richie James. The concern, the only difference here, I like him. He's a better play than McKenzie here, more involved in his offense. The concern would be the ownership, but it's somewhat warranted because look at his production. These are his fantasy points. In 3 out of his last 4 games, 17 or more fantasy points. He's producing 8.4 targets per game over the last month, but he does rely on targets. He's not getting downfield usage. He's probably not going to be targeted or the first read in the red zone all that much. He needs to see these 7 to 10 target games, and if he's not getting it, well, he's kind of left in the dust, and he's coming in as like a top 10 owned player. Richie James is definitely still in play. A borderline, yes. I'll prefer Isaiah Hodgins right now. Other guys in this range, yes, Tyler Boyd is in play. None of these Ravens receivers are all screaming out to me all that much, if at all. Then if we go up a little bit, we do get the veteran $4,500 Adam Thielen. He's going to come in really low owned. I don't think he's a slam dunk play, but I do think Adam Thielen is a nice play, especially if you're playing Cousins in double or triple stacks. Thielen has the touchdown upside. He's now lower owned and cheaper than KJ Osborne, who even though he's been playing really well, especially last week with kind of the 2nd team unit for most of that game, it's still Thielen who's running more routes, especially in the red zone. Now, an interesting name on here is Darius Slayton, and the reason why he's interesting is he is the most expensive Giants wide receiver, but it's Isaiah Hodgins and Richie James who are coming in a good amount higher owned. And it's because they're producing more as of late, but you can see the snap counts here for Slayton, 92%, 92%, 98%, 82%. He's still out there. He's still playing the primary role on the outside as a deep threat wide receiver. And now he faces a Viking team that allows the 5th most explosive plays. He would be the guy getting those if there was one on this team. And this year, his yards per target ranked 5th out of any single wide receiver, 10.2 yards per target. This means his targets when he's getting them are valuable. Again, they're downfield. They give him a lot of upside at this price tag. I like him. And I like his receiving prop. We talked about Justin Jefferson earlier. Over 48.5 receiving yards for Darius Slayton this week, I think is a fantastic option. I have him around 57 yards. So Slayton's in play, and that's a lot of wide receiver value. Let's talk about the quarterbacks now. And it starts up top with Josh Allen, who takes on Miami. And Miami has not been good against quarterbacks this year. The 2nd most fantasy points per game, the 2nd most rushing yards per game, which obviously matters when it comes to Josh Allen. And Josh Allen against this Miami team this year has put up a total, factoring in the rushing yards, 447 and 381 yards. Now, the concern is his prop, right? His prop, the betting market, it's only at 53.5 total yards because he's a 10-point favorite. They're expecting to slow the game down a little bit more. Maybe on the opposite side of this one, Miami can't really force a close game, and then Josh Allen's not throwing in the 3rd or 4th quarter all that much. That would be your concern. So maybe a little bit of pause here. Is he the best play on the slate? Well, let's find out. Because with the highest team total and that skill set and how he's produced against Miami this year, he's definitely in play, but there's other quarterbacks here. Talking about $5,900 Kirk Cousins against a number 31 ranked Giants secondary. I like that for the price discount, especially when his team total right now is 26 points, pretty close to Josh Allen's at 27.5. And Cousins with a 26-point team total averages this year 312 passing yards per game. That is fantastic. That is great. If you're playing Kirk Cousins or any of these quarterbacks, stack them with at least 2 of their players on their team. But on these small 3-game slates, I like to get a little bit more creative and go with triple stacks, 3 players from his own team. Okay, then there's 4 more quarterback options on here. I think that Joe Burrow is a solid option at 6,900 if you're looking or you're just kind of in this mid-range. But to be completely honest, for a similar team total and in my projections right now, a slightly higher projection on Kirk Cousins, Joe Burrow's not going to be as elite of a play, but let it be known that these are the 3 best quarterback options on the slate. I would personally rank it Kirk Cousins, Josh Allen, and Joe Burrow, but it obviously depends on your total lineup construction here. But there is another quarterback in play. And before we get to him, I will point out that Joe Burrow over 265.5 passing yards. I do like. I have him projected for the most yards on the slate at 282 yards, so I do think that one is appealing. Now, that other quarterback that is in play, it's not Lamar Jackson. Who knows what he'll look like? Just an 18.5 point team total, expecting a little bit less mobility. It's not Teddy Bridgewater or Tua or Skylar Thompson. It's going to be Daniel Jones. I don't think he's a slam dunk play. I think a lot of people will go to him, but he's a slight underdog with a nice team total versus a bad secondary here, and to me, that makes him a nice play. And he's not picking up ownership. Somewhat surprisingly, he's been a top 12 quarterback in 3 out of his last 4 games, including one of those games against this Vikings team where he put up 22 fantasy points, was the quarterback 9 overall on the week. And let's not forget, he has the sneaky rushing upside, the Josh Allen light, if you will, when you factor in that Josh Allen's old coach is now, Brian Dable is now the coach for the Giants and Daniel Jones, so he has that rushing upside. Now, I'll be completely honest, I think his overall ceiling, because of the playmakers and the passing that he's playing with, because of the fact that he has just a 22.5 point team total, it's not as high as those other 3 quarterbacks we talked about, which is why I'm not jumping up and down to get to him, but don't mistake it at all. He's still firmly in play. I think there's like a 10% chance he's in the winning lineup, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is. Now, the best thing you could do for him is his passing prop. I took the over pretty easily here. This is probably my favorite one right there with Jefferson that we've talked about on this slate. I have him in the 230s for passing yards right now. I think this is a fantastic prop. Again, you can take it linked down below on prizepicks.com. When you click that link, you use the code SAL22, you'll get a free bet up to $100. You put in 20, you get $20 Rooskies right back. You put in 100, you get $100 Rooskies right back. So check it out with the link in the description below. Okay, so those are quarterbacks. What about these tight ends now? Because on these types of slates, when there's only 3 games, the double tight end, putting a tight end in your flex does make it a little bit more possible to do so. We start with TJ Hockenson. To me, he's a slam dunk. Yes, he looks fantastic. He's facing a bad Giants secondary that allows the 7th most yards to the tight end position. And right now, Hockenson isn't the highest owned tight end. He's not even the 2nd highest owned tight end on this slate. According to the DFS blueprint, link down below if you want to check it out, he's the 3rd highest owned tight end, and that's a mistake. Because since joining this team, the Vikings, 9 games, let's not count the last game of the year where they only played like a half, 9 games, he's averaging 14.4 fantasy points on 9.4 targets per game. Only Travis Kelce is more productive over that 9-game span. So yeah, TJ Hockenson is a great option. If you're looking for an absolute cheap play, the cheapest I would probably go on this slate is Daniel Ballinger. I don't think he's by any means some sort of fantastic jump up and down option, but the rookie at $3,000 flat is out there a lot. As you can see here, he's running routes on 91%, 83% of the passing plays these last 3 games. For a rookie, that's really rare, but it's only translated to, you see here, 3 targets, 4 targets, 2 targets, 3 targets. He's probably going to see 3 or 4 targets at most, maybe 4 or 5 targets in a game where they're trailing. So at $3,000 flat, to really pay off for you, well, he's going to have to probably find the end zone. But the reason why he is appealing at that cheap of a price tag, he's running a lot of routes, he allows you to maybe afford an extra stud wide receiver, an extra Tyreek Hill or Jamar Chase in your lineup that wouldn't be in there instead, and I think that's worth it. So he's in play depending on your lineup construction, only if it allows you to get up to another stud. Some other guys in this slate, I think Hayden Hurst is really appealing. Like, I would probably prefer Hayden Hurst right now over Daniel Ballinger. I think he's a great play. Because let's look at Hayden Hurst. He gets hurt in week 13, right? He only plays 12% of the snaps. Before that, though, he's basically out there, the starting tight end, playing 2/3 of the snaps, running all the routes. He then returns week 17, the Buffalo game that ends up getting canceled. So now nobody really knows what to expect from this guy, not seeing him play in like a month and a half. Well, he comes out in week 18 and he sees 72% of the snaps. He runs 30 routes, basically tying his season high, completely healthy, and this leads to 5 targets, 2 of them in the red zone. All of this is great for a $3,100 tight end. I'll take him right now. I think you can double stack him with Hockenson or Mark Andrews. I think he looks great. Dawson Knox is also in play, mainly just in Buffalo stacks, but he's coming in a little bit too high owned according to the DFS blueprint. And then there's Mark Andrews. He is not out of play by any means, but we have to see what happens with the quarterback situation here. He himself has been struggling, and at the end of the day, team total isn't all that appealing. I'd have more interest if he was lower owned, but he's currently, as it stands right now, coming in as the highest owned tight end. If we're searching in that price range, I'll take TJ Hockenson. You can play both of them though. though. Don't think you can't. You could definitely play both of them to get different. Now, how about this for a little bit of a community prop out there people have been asking for? We put this one on to win $200, 5 picks. Daniel Jones. These are all the props we talked about. Daniel Jones, Kirk Cousins, Joe Burrow. Their passing yard overs. Track the Jeff Wilson rushing yards if it comes out. Darius Slayton and Justin Jefferson's overs. We take those all on prizepicks.com. Combine them together, 20 to try and win 200. You can take this as well, linked down below in the description if you want the clan, the community prop this week. And if you'd like to increase your chances of winning, you can check out the DFS blueprint down below. Projections, ownership, lineup optimizer, Discord access, a whole lot more is in there. That's like 10% of what's in there. You can check it out by clicking the link in the description and joining the squad with the countless others. So I appreciate you tuning in. Best of luck on this Sunday slate. Hopefully one of you become a millionaire, even if you just win 50 bucks, get yourself a nice dinner, whatever it might be. Best of luck. Hopefully your knowledge has been increased right now, you beautiful people. And I'll see all you fellas in the next one.